A 42-year-old North Dakota man making a plea deal in a federal case that involved the sexual assault and abuse of a 14-year-old girl in Brown County. Court records show that Kelly Rosemore will plead guilty to enticement of a minor and committing a felony against a minor while required to register as a sex offender.
In March and April of this year, federal investigators say that Rosemore traveled across state lines into Wisconsin after meeting the girl online about a year ago. In the following months, the criminal complaint said he drove to Wisconsin several times, rented various motel rooms, and met up with a teenager who told authorities she feared him. The complaint details several occasions of sexual assault, strangulation, and physical abuse. At one point, the victim told investigators that Rosemore took photos of the alleged acts and threatened her with extortion. The plea deal would carry at least 23 years in prison, as well as the possibility of victim restitution. Rosemore will appear in federal court next week.